So welcome again to another edition of the Influencer Marketing Roundtable. My name is Gordon Glenister, but some of you, of course, may know me or may not know me. So I thought I'd just give you a little bit of a background. I'm a busy person. I've got lots going on. First of all, I host the Influence Global podcast, which now is in its 4th season. We interview some amazing people from all around the world. You can listen to that on Spotify and on any of the other networks. I'm also the writer, author of Influencer Marketing Strategy, which was published just last year. And I'm delighted to say it's going to be published in Portuguese in March. So I'm going over to Brazil in March to launch that. So I'm super excited about that. The reason why is because it's a massive market for influencer marketing. I'm also a panelist and host at various events, particularly in the marketing and business sector. And I talk all about influencer marketing and membership as well. But as well as all of that, I'm also trying to hold down a full-time job, which is the Chief Strategy Officer for Audience to Media. And that's a global influencer marketing agency with over 100 million profiles on our platform, which is quite enormous. But from an association background, I've been very much involved with founding 3 of them. First of all, the Branded Content Marketing Association Influence Division, which we launched in 2019. I'm also the founder of Membership World, which is a community of trade associations and professional membership bodies. And because I have an interest in the events industry, I'm co-founder of the Meetings and Event Support Association. So yeah, I'm quite a busy person. But I also, in the evenings and at weekends, I run my own influencer program. Now, I'm not going to go through this in detail, but over the last 2 or 3 years, is so many people have asked me about, what does it take to be an influencer? And by the way, it doesn't have to be an influencer. It can be also a thought leader, an expert, because that's what we want to be seen as, best in class. The person that people want to go to, and this is what my program does. It's over 3 months. It's 1.5 hours on Zoom, and we've had some absolutely amazing results from some of the individuals that I've had through that program. So if anybody's interested in having a chat with me about that afterwards, then do so. Just a reminder, I think Linda may have her. Linda, if you can just put yourself on mute, that would be great. Thank you. So today we're talking all about Twitter, and Twitter is again a fascinating platform. It's been around for a long while, and I thought I'd start with a few sort of famous tweets that have been out there. I don't know if any of you remember that famous one that Ellen DeGeneres put out post Oscars, and that reached 2.1 million likes alone, with over 204,000 replies. And the reason I wanted to put that there is obviously there's this whole thing about credibility by association. If you tag people or you involve them, engage them, if you think about the celebrities, even in that picture, and the audiences that each of those people have, you can imagine the reach that one tweet will have had. Also very personal stories like the one from Harry Styles and Lewis Tomlinson. These have been just shows you where you can really really work well together with people that are in your niche, if you will. Right, and of course President Obama, many people know, of course, he's been one of the biggest accounts on Twitter. And just that one thing, that one tweet there, which was in January 2017, just showed you 1.6 million likes with 22,000 replies. Very personal stories. That's what people like to still see. Right. One thing I will say is the importance of posting visual content. We're still, and even on top of that, video content. 97% of people tend to still focus on visuals on Twitter. So my suggestion to you is always, where you can, a picture tells 1,000 words. And this is just a really good example of one that Naked Wines did recently. And you can see there that was retweeted, over 135 times. Something, very relevant to what they do. One thing you can also do is to follow your customers for sure, and your competitors on Twitter. Know what's going on in your particular niche. Also think about following specific hashtags that are relevant for your area. I mean, in my case, influencer marketing. So I want to know what's going on around me. You can also think about running a follower campaign, and there's a tool on Twitter that allows you to look at a much greater deep dive into the right phrases, looking at what people are talking about. So do have a look at this function. It's really, really useful. And if you do this right, you can really amplify your reach. One thing I would say as well is check your analytics all of the time. Some of the most active users and professional content creators will always have an eye on the analytics. This, for example, is a tweet that I put out recently, which I must admit was a meme. And it was about the reference to Visa and MasterCard. But you can see there straight away, I'm aware that that has created 21,000 impressions. It's been retweeted 38 times, and I've had 39 profile visits. And remember, when you're creating content, it always has to be ideally educational, inspirational, or entertaining. However, on Twitter, I'm going to add another dimension, which is controversial. Now, being controversial can be good and bad. I mean, if you think about somebody like Piers Morgan, for example, who has a huge Twitter following, he is controversial, and he will have as many people love what he says, but others will not like what he says. But either way, he gets activity, there's no such thing as bad publicity, just no publicity. I mean, some of us may disagree with that, of course, but be mindful of what you feel comfortable with. But unfortunately, we live in now the attention economy, and you have to be provocative at times. So have a think about what type of content you might like to consider. Always keep an eye on watch what's trending. And you can see there is a section at the top of your profile which says trending. Now, what you don't want to do is always, one thing that really annoys me is when you've got a really interesting discussion going on about laptop, and then somebody's jumped in and put buy FX trading or something. Now that for me looks completely irrelevant to the main topic and just downright annoying. So I think what I would say is that if you are trying to jump on a wave, make sure that there's at least a tangible link back to the main conversation that's going on. What you can do is you can obviously have lots of discussions on Twitter, but what you can do is just to keep yourself relevant and in front of your target audience. You can plan your tweets in a month and have a look at, at least some, I mean, I always say this on Instagram and any other sort of platform. It's really important to have a content plan, a content calendar. I mean, here is just a few ideas that you can think about. These are things that you do on these particular days. So whether it's Motivation Monday, you do a Twitter poll, you ask a question, it just helps you, because sometimes when you're super busy, it's really difficult to keep coming up with ideas. So what you can do is you can use things like Hootsuite or Buffer or other scheduling tools to plan those tweets in advance. You can also use polls, like whether it be, trying to get feedback on your content and perhaps even adding humor. You can create communities by asking all sorts of interesting questions that are relevant to your audience. You can tap into trends and obviously make a quiz. And those are just a few suggestions here, but I'm sure you've got even better ones to consider. What we're trying to do all of the time is provoke people to responding in some shape or form. And just what doesn't work, if I'm really honest, and I've seen it myself, is just abject promotion. Nobody's really interested in your new website, or if you think about it, always think about what value is the person looking at this likely to receive. Are they going to laugh? Are they going to be educated? Are they going to be inspired? Yeah, or are they going to be annoyed that they want to react in some shape or form? Because if it's just, as I say, just a promotional tweet, it's just not going to get traction. When it comes to videos, I noticed we've got a videographer on the call today. It'd be interesting to get his perspective on that. Lots of ways in which you can use different types of content on video. So here's just a few. We know that how-to videos are still one of the most searched online. You can have sort of Q&As. You can do live video, of course. Perhaps you'd like to spotlight your customer and what they're doing, maybe with a case study of some shape or form. You could absolutely add some gift guides. You download something that you might like to send them from your website, from your tweet. Unboxing videos, of course, have been super successful, particularly amongst many influencers. So you can see there's quite a few different options there for you to think about. What I would say is tweet consistently. It makes me laugh when I hear some people say, oh, I've done my bit for the promotion, I've done a tweet, as if the dial's going to move from one tweet. It isn't. What you have to be doing is doing this regularly. What I would say, though, is be mindful of the timing as well. And the timing, of course, varies. So I would be thinking about, when is your audience most likely to be online? That's the time to be tweeting most. Also be reactive to some of the comments that are going on. If you think about it, if you were going into a pub or a bar and you met somebody or met a group of friends, you wouldn't just say something and then shut up, would you? You'd be continually having that conversation. And the way I look at Twitter is it's a conversational platform. So here's just a few more specific things that you could do. And I've just come up with sort of Sunday Fun Day, Monday Motivation, transformational or testimonial Tuesday. I mean, ironically, although we're talking about Twitter here, this could also work for Instagram or any others. But it's, I think the reason why I like to say this is because then people get used to seeing a particular format. And I must admit, I'm not necessarily doing this on Twitter. I'm not so active on Twitter as I perhaps are on Instagram. But we've actually employed this formula, or that it's worked really, really well, particularly if you've got graphics around it. So that if you, for example, were to do a testimonial Tuesday, and within that, it's your brand logo, it's your link at the bottom, and it's called Testimonial Tuesday or something, then if people are scrolling down your feed, they'll be able to see it previous Tuesdays, other testimonials. It will be in a similar format. Yeah. Bearing in mind, when we're trying to look at content all of the time, there's so much out there. There's so much for us to consume, and our little brains just can't take it all in. So the easier and the more simplified you make it, the better. The other thing I think is super important is to make sure that you give people a chance to follow you. And that will be on your email, website footers, making sure that there's a direct link back to your Twitter account. You can also use, what do you call it? Linktree as well. I forgot to mention that as well. Anybody doesn't know what Linktree is, it's a link which allows you to have a whole load of other links to it. So that's really helpful, because one of the challenges you'll often have within your bio is you've only got so many characters and letters that you can, words that you can put. Any presentation. So if you're talking at events in some shape or form, make sure that you've always got your Twitter handle. Ideally, if you can keep it on every single slide, not just at the end, that means that when you're talking to people, then actually there's a chance that people could comment based upon what they've said at that particular time. Business cards, car and van livery, if it's relevant to your sector, and stuff like office and shop window stickers, and merchandise. I don't know if any of you got branded merchandise. That's a really cool thing to do, is to have your Twitter, even if it's not the handle, it's just the fact that it reminds people to follow you with the logo. And oh, sorry, the last thing was a newsletter link as well. Make sure that you have it on there. There's a few extra tips as well. Make sure that you've got your keywords in your bio. And one thing I would say, though, is that if people, for example, in my case, if you go to my Twitter, you go to my LinkedIn, you go to my Instagram, they are all consistent with the same message, the same branding. And that's just as important with Twitter, that you are connected and your keywords are relevant. You say, whatever you say, who you are, is right the way across all of the other networks as possible. And always be thinking about searching for people talking, not taking, sorry, I should have put that as an L there, missing, talking about your niche. Because what you want to be doing is making sure that you are not missing a trick. If you're in autism, everywhere where autism is mentioned, you should be having that conversation. Asking people to follow you in your communications as well. Sorry, I did this late at night. I should have repeated that last slide. Great. Okay, guys, that's enough from me. There's a few sort of tips for conversation there. I hope that was interesting. Yeah, so let's have a broader conversation at the moment. Anybody like to sort of jump in with a question before I pose any more? Joe, yeah.
Yeah, I just kind of thinking about this in terms of where I am. That I am conscious that having moved back away from a corporate profile into a personal profile, my social media presence on Twitter and Facebook in particular is very much kind of personal content. So I'm kind of now wrestling with the dilemma of, do I clear my kind of previous online life? Do I work with a new brand name, or I'm Joe, I represent myself as Joe always, but do I create Joseph Catchyside as a professional and start from scratch? Because otherwise people are going to get an awful lot about rugby league and football and politics and all sorts of other stuff if they look at my current feed.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, to be honest. So I launched my new Instagram in September. And if you look at my Instagram, for example, it is entirely about influencer marketing. So there's nothing about me going out and having dinner or me going to an event. It's purely, even though it still says Gordon Glenister, it's purely about that. Now that's a decision that I've taken. I mean, it's fair to say that, and I think it's a very personal one, to be honest, Joe. I think some people like to feel that they are the brand in every sense possible. But if you think about the way, and maybe Twitter can work better in terms of personal versus business, but it really does depend on you more than anything else. The reason I said what I said is because if there's too much clutter, if there's too much noise going on, I think sometimes people don't always get to understand who and what you're about. It's not an easy one to answer. I'd be interested to hear from anybody else as to whether or not they've gone down that route.
I've got a mixed one.
Yes. Sorry, Sandy. I didn't mention you, did I? When you?
It's okay. I sloped in late, and I'm going to slope off early because I'm delivering training to 60 people as we finish. So I'm going to slope off about 2 minutes before the end, just so I can set up for my next call. When I first started network marketing, I had about 200 friends on Facebook and no other platform, and now I've got about 10,000 followers across, LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, trying to build my Pinterest, but there's only I'm one person. But people buy from people, and I think that if you've got stuff, if you think about your ideal client and who your ideal person is, I mean, you're going to want to be able to talk to them. There's no point in having, for me, I mean, I wouldn't want an astrophysicist on my, as a customer, because I would not have a clue how to start that conversation. Right. So I think if you're into rugby and you've got all that, I mean, all the rugby boys I know, I used to do stuff with the rugby union in Wales, and they're very, very highly educated. I mean, the teams are all like doctors and university graduates. But talking about rugby is a good in. I mean, it's a good way to start the conversation, and I think people will respond to that. I think you can be too clinical on your business page. I mean, my pages tend to be mix of inspiration, a mix of personal stuff, but I would never post, oh, I hate my husband, or, you know, that sort of thing. I mean, I wouldn't post that sort of stuff. You know, everything I post, I'm very mindful about, and about the message it's giving. So, you know, my Instagram is very, you know, it's a very distinct brand. You know, every other post is a inspirational post, and then there's a picture which is either a personal picture, or, you know, food, or somewhere I've been on a holiday. And then sort of once every 3 weeks, I'll pop in something to do with the business. You know, but I'm still getting customers from that, because people can, you know, relate to me, and I'm getting followers because they think, oh, right, well, she's really inspirational. I really like the quotes she puts up every other day. You know, oh, you know, she's traveled a bit, you know, she likes cats, whatever. You know, I can start a conversation about that and get a customer from it. So
yeah, so I absolutely agree with you. Sometimes by having those human interests,
yeah,
that can make a big difference. I mean, I think the most important thing generally within social media today is you know, we're trying to find people that we can relate to, aren't we?
Yeah.
That we can really have some responses to. Thank you, Sandy. Siona, sorry, did I not welcome you in? I don't know if I did. I apologize.
I just sat here very quietly in the background. Don't worry about it.
Sorry. Lovely to see you. Where are you from?
So I'm from the other northeast. I'm from northeast Scotland. So Aberdeen and Grampian Chamber of Commerce is where I'm based.
Oh, super, lovely,
Yeah.
lovely. So from a Chamber of Commerce, this is very interesting. How are you promoted? Do you use Twitter, and how do you use it?
I do. So I've got the sort of personal professional one's really different. So my Facebook page is exclusively personal for me. I post nothing to do with work.
Yes.
It's how I communicate with friends and school friends and family. And so if any of my clients ask to connect with me on Facebook, it's a no. This is a very separate hat for me. So on Twitter and LinkedIn, it's very much the kind of chamber hat that I wear. But interestingly, so our comms team promote our members' news through themselves on Twitter and LinkedIn, but actually, promote the chamber news, but I actually promote our members' news. So my Twitter account has virtually nothing about me in it. It's a tool that I use to help organizations who maybe don't have the time, don't have the expertise to get their message across. So
yeah,
we do things really probably quite uniquely here. So we have something very exclusively for the chamber. The rest of us are here to support our clients. So that's what we use our Twitter and LinkedIn accounts for.
So I was just, that sounds really good. So would you perhaps put on things like grants that are available? Would you put stuff that, so you're seen as the curator of all things related to business within Scotland, or
and lobbying, you know, changes that obviously the First Minister made announcements yesterday, so that has an impact on business in the regions. So we put up stories about, you know, hey, if your event was limited to 200 now, it doesn't need to be anymore. If you're going to a football match, a rugby match, hey, you can, you know, as long as you've got your vaccine certificate or your lateral flow test results, you can go to that. So some of it's around that, but some of it's actually promoting our clients' news stories as well. So if they've won a contract, we can tell the world about it.
Yeah.
If they've got a new website, as you say, maybe not the most exciting thing, but to them it is, then we can tell the world about it. So it's which again, we use Twitter analytics a huge amount, and it's really important for us, because that's one of the ways we can say, well, actually through our reach we helped, you know, 50,000 impressions, 97 retweets. So, you know, it's that kind of wider network. It's not just about me, it's about my network.
Absolutely. And I think what you've said there is really fascinating, because actually, you know, you're in the business of trying to have people join you as an organization, and things that show the amplification of your message and what you're doing for members by those stats, of course, make a big difference, don't they?
Yeah, very much so.
One thing I was I was involved in something a couple of years ago when it was the worst of the pandemic, actually, and it was a Twitter bomb. Has anybody been involved with a Twitter bomb? No? I have to say I hadn't been, and it was really fascinating. So the reason I mention it is because this organization was called Forgotten Limited, and it represented loads and loads of businesses that had literally been effectively no funding. You know, they were less than 3 years old, or all they had was effectively loans or more debt. So many of the organizations, small to medium-sized businesses, they got together through a few group of individuals on Facebook, and this group grew massively. I mean, very, very quickly, because if you remember during the pandemic, it was like a cliff edge of a problem, wasn't it? And what they were trying to do was to find a way to lobby the Treasury or key influential people within government, and do it cleverly. So what the organizer did said, right, we're going to share this particular tweet at 8 p.m. tonight. And this was some of the messaging that they shared out, and they drove it really, really well. So there was so much. So, and they gave us 15 minutes, said, right, it's coming on 8 o'clock, and everybody went on Twitter. And of course, effectively, we were trending at that particular time. So that in itself, the wave of response. So if you've got a cause, and this is particularly interesting for you, maybe Juliana, around autism, if you've got a cause and you've got a number of key influencers, you can actually start to make something trending if you all work together at a specific time together. So it's almost pushing the needle together. So I thought that was quite an interesting observation. I'd never been involved in it, but I could just see the conversation really developing in front of me. So that was really interesting. Anybody else like to comment around any other questions specifically about some of the things that I said? Actually, video content. Who's our friend from video? Was it, or is he gone? I think he might have gone. Yeah, so Lorna, what sort of content do you put on Twitter?
I have to be honest, Twitter is the one that I don't really use. I'm on there, but I've never really understood it.
Yeah.
Or how to use it properly.
Well, I hope even today, just by doing a few things, what I say to people is if you overwhelm your stuff, you won't use it. I mean, I know I should be on TikTok, for example. I just keep putting it off and putting it off. That's only because, obviously, for me, I'm around the world of influencer marketing, and there are some amazing TikTokers. I've interviewed them on my podcast, so I think, well, when I go on TikTok, it's got to be right. So, but what I would do, guys, is have a look. Something you might like to do as an instant. I didn't really cover it in the session there, but go and have a look at maybe 10 of your competitors or exemplars that are already on Twitter, and have a look at their last 10 tweets, and have a look at the level of engagement that they've got. So whether or not it's what type of responses they're getting, because if you do that and you put that into an Excel spreadsheet, it's a fascinating piece of work, because what you'll see is how people are reacting, what they're saying, what they're liking, whether it's a video post, whether it's a photograph, whether it's a stat, whatever they're doing, you'll be in a position to see that. And if you can imagine 10 posts over 10 people, that's 100 pieces of content on an Excel spreadsheet that you'll be able to see, and you can then pick out, oh, right, so that tweet of that person worked really well, that tweet of this person worked well, and so do you see what I'm saying here? You can then effectively merge that in to almost create your ideal content strategy, linked in with some of the things that I was, no pun intended, with some of the other ideas that I was sharing a few minutes ago, and by having a plan. If you can't do this consistently, guys, then it's almost a waste of a tweet. Yeah. Really think about it. Think about the keywords, think about the hashtags as well. But if you're not sure, the best way to do it is look who else is doing it really well, and what are they doing. Yeah.
How many hashtags for Twitter?
I don't think not many, because there's only so many characters. So I would be putting no more than about 4 or 5, depending on how long they are.
I worked Twitter hard, Gordon. I worked Twitter hard for a while now. I'm talking about over a year, couple of years, but
yeah,
I didn't get a whole lot back from it. No. I use it, I'll be honest, I have it there because it's there. I use it in the mornings. I copy a couple of press to me, it's just sort of, it's an extra news. It's a news feed. A lot of people break news and news feed from it. I've never spoken that. I don't know anybody personally that has got anything from it. Like,
yeah, if I'm really super honest, it's my least active social media myself.
I'm the same, Gordon. It's there. It's there, and I dabble in it. I used to post up a lot of videos. I was posting up on. I have two Twitter accounts. I was posting up to 8 videos a day on it. I was scheduling them up on it, and I wasn't getting much feedback at all from it. So I actually stopped.
Yeah,
I get a lot more I get a lot more reach on Facebook and Instagram on videos.
Yeah, no, and I get that. I think what Twitter really is all about is conversations more than
correct.
anything
Yeah,
else.
I think you're right. Yeah,
and it is well used by lots of media. So it could be that that there's a big story out there that is relevant. I mean, Juliana, because of what you were saying earlier about autism and, you know, having a real focus on a cause, I do think Twitter is important for you. Maybe less so for some of the others, but I would not ignore Twitter at all, though. And I don't.
Always keep your. That's the simplest way. Always keep your toe in, like, you know. But it's, do you know what it's used a lot for as well, though, Gordon? I've noticed a lot of people like issue press releases, and rather than different, like the likes of sports clubs, horse racing, some big corporate organizations, instead of them contacting a journalist to let them know something, they don't do that anymore. They just put it up on Twitter. They're using it sort of as a news feed. Would that be right?
Yeah, well, I tell you what, news is, if you think about it, we're all journalists, aren't we? Because if we are at the scene of something that's breaking, how long does it take a journalist to come or a photographer to go to a site? And if we're seeing right there in front of us, you can imagine how important a photograph, you know, news breaks on Twitter. That is definitely the platform for
if you just have a minute, Gordon, right, I'll give you a very good example, right? How to use it if you wanted to use Twitter for a certain thing. I ended up in the High Court in Dublin, right, in relation to a company that I had a disagreement with, and I started tweeting the letters that I was sending to them, right, which they ignored for years, and they thought I was going to go away, and I didn't go away. And the more I posted the stuff up on Twitter, okay, the more and more they wanted the stuff taken down, and they had to go all the way to the High Court, right, for us to enter into arrangements for me to stop. And Twitter can be a very, very, very powerful tool, right, if you use it in the way that you want, you know. But in relation to sort of marketing your business and trying to win business on Twitter, to me, it's a non-starter. Like.
Yeah, I think it's about, I mean, my view, I said earlier, is following your customers.
That's very good. Yeah,
it's getting an idea about what they're doing, and understanding what's important to them. Perhaps will give you an edge and an
at
angle
the time, Gordon. Right, at the
talking.
time when Twitter was the be all and end all, everybody was on Twitter. I would never envisage how Instagram got so popular.
Yeah, no, indeed. Thank you, James. Leanne, tell us about. Are you on Twitter, Leanne?
I was on it, but I removed it a couple of months ago because I was like getting off of all my social media so I could like focus on my work and stuff. But I have had it for about, I'd say 11 years, I think.
And what sort of stuff would you post as a younger person?
When I was really young, when I was probably about 13, 14, that was all, my account was all about boy bands and all about singers that I like. But that community was so like powerful. You get millions of people and they'd be making group chats. And like that Louis Tomlinson tweet from One Direction, that was like one of the biggest tweets ever. That was a massive thing and everyone was talking about it, and people still talk about it now and people still retweet it now. But as I got older, I didn't really use that account anymore, and then it became just more personal, and I never tweeted. It was just retweets and likes and things like that.
Yeah.
But I'm going to make a new one that's probably a bit better.
And I think, if you think about pop stars, where would they ever have been in a position where they could literally see raw feedback from their fan base, without, they were in the past. If you think about, back in the day when I was a young lad, that but basically these famous people, celebrities, wouldn't have ever got to know what their fans were thinking. But now they've got communities that have been built up through Twitter, which I think is really fascinating. And also when it comes to product research, if you're thinking about promoting a new idea, a concept, getting that feedback from your target audience is super important. It really is. Thank you, Leanne. Lisa, I know you put your hand up, but then it went down again. Did you have a question?
Yes, no, I was just following on from what you were saying. I think the key thing is, depending on what your niche is, Twitter can be helpful, but you need to think, if you're going to use it for your business, you need to think about where your ideal clients are hanging out. Precisely. Because for me, I have two hats. For me, for my lifestyle blog, I have to spread myself across just about every social platform going. I haven't gone on TikTok yet, nor do I intend to. But that's because brands like to see whatever I write about posted and tagged on their social channels as well. And something I find very useful as a blogger on Twitter is I will search for the hashtag bloggers wanted or bloggers required, and that sometimes brings up opportunities to write for people which are paid or gifted. Equally, if you've got, if you're looking for a journalist to take note of something, the hashtag PR request is quite a useful one. If you click on that, there's also a Twitter account called Help a Reporter Out, which is HARO. And if you use that hashtag, you can sometimes find what things that journalists are looking for. And then you can go in and pitch your, whatever your product is, if it ties up with what they're looking for. So I think you just need to be realistic about what you can do, particularly if you're a sole trader or an SME or an solopreneur, whatever you want to call yourself. You need to think about how much time you've got and where you want to target. But Twitter can be helpful, but it just depends. But the other thing to remember is, if you're going to use Twitter successfully and you're not a celebrity for it or a huge brand, tweets have a very finite lifespan. I mean, you think how many thousands and thousands of tweets are going up all the time. Yeah. And if you just post once or twice a week, you don't really have a great deal of hope of being seen or being picked up, unless it's something that somehow somebody picks up on it and retweets it and then it goes viral, and that's very lucky. Yeah. So as a blogger, I'm on Twitter all the time.
Are you? How many? Just so interestingly enough. So tell me more about that. How often would you be tweeting in the week?
Well, I have scheduled tweets which go up every hour, which is just basically retweeting. It's a plugin that I use on my WordPress site, and it just retweets or reposts links to older blog posts just to kind of keep it visual. That's good. I manually.
And what's that plugin, Lisa?
It's called what's it called? It's actually called Revive Old Posts. That's nothing very snazzy, but if you Google, or not if you Google, but if you go onto WordPress and you look for plugins that retweet your social posts, that's the one I use. And you can set. I only have it set up for Twitter, but you can also link your Facebook to it as well.
Great, that's good. See, great intel.
But yeah, that as I said, it's I have stuff going up on a kind of automated basis, and every so often I jump on blogger comment threads and we kind of look at each other's posts and we share the love, as it were, and comment on each other's posts, and then we retweet. And there are certain accounts that will actually retweet your your blog post if you use their hashtags or you tag them accordingly. So from a blogger's perspective, Twitter's very useful to me, both in terms of finding work and also getting my stuff out there. From a freelance services point of view, the two platforms that I focus on, or I'm planning to focus on most, are going to be LinkedIn and Instagram. And I've set up a separate Instagram account, although there's nothing on there at the moment. I'm just preparing a series of posts to start going up there.
So just on that Instagram thing, because there is some relevance, will that be one that's very much related purely to your blogger, your own business, or will that be a mixture of personal?
No, I'll have two separate accounts. So I have an Instagram account for my blog,
right?
I've set up, although not populated yet, there will be a separate Instagram account for my freelance business, because I can't combine the two, and they both have very different. I don't want to say aesthetic because that sounds awfully poncy, but no. Yeah, they have different looks and they have different content.
That makes absolute sense. Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, the aesthetics are important, actually, aren't they? Visually stimulus. When people, because if you think about it, when people are checking you out, they're checking. They may have heard about you. They're going and looking at your LinkedIn. They're looking at your Twitter. And what does this person stand for? What are they all about? Getting your banner headline is really important as well. So because it's a bit more space, and it's very easy just to have a picture on there, and by all means have a nice, warm, friendly, approachable picture. But if there's a way in which you can be very clear in that about what you do or what pain point you are solving very succinctly, like, for example, blogger services, Lisa, or something like that is a good way of doing it. But I mean, this whole thing of separating business with personal I think it's down to personal choice at the end of the day. What I talk about is a personal brand is what somebody says about you when you're not in the room, So when I go off here and you talk to other people and you say, oh, who's this guy, Gordon Glenister? Whatever you say and comes out of your lips in some shape or form, I will have had an influence on that, good, bad, indifferent. And that's the same with all of us. We leave an impression on somebody, don't we? And what we want to be trying to do is do it in a way that people feel totally engaged and supported, and they know how to talk to you about it. Another good idea for you to remember, guys, is that you don't have to have your name as your Twitter account. So it could be a completely different service. I mean, one of my friends is a videographer. Her name is Latoya Lavelle, but her Instagram, for example, is London Videographer, which I think is quite smart because it's a highly searchable keyword. So have a think about that as well, particularly if you've got a very common name, is thinking about, I don't know, autism girl Juliana or something. Do you know what I'm trying to say here is something that is a good tagline that actually brings people together. Good point. Thank you, Lisa, for your insight. Really helpful. Arif, do you want to comment at all on anything that you've heard?
No, I'm good. Thanks, Gordon. Really interesting stuff. Thank you. No
problem. Nice to see you anyway. Adrian, did you want to comment on anything?
Things really from me, Gordon. I think first off, thanks for your content and everybody else's input, because from my perspective, I'm not a big social media user, but equally our organization, we have a Twitter account, and you referenced the sort of educational and inspirational, and I think from a hospice perspective, a lot of the content that we're creating is around that, both to drive the education of people into what our service actually offers, and the reality of it, and also to encourage people, obviously, in terms of fundraising and supporting us. But I guess my interest and the reason that I'm across this today is more from the perspective that I'm leading on launching a new brand that's going to support the hospice from an income perspective. So really, I'm looking at making sure that our social sort of interactions to support that brand are in the right place. And really interesting comments from other contributors this morning around how actually from a business perspective, and perhaps from a brand building perspective, Twitter isn't necessarily you know, the sort of the go-to place. I think it's something that we need to consider and need to be mindful of. But I think there are going to be other avenues. And I think that's really useful for me to know what not to do as much as what to do. And I think that that's really valuable.
Yeah, I mean, one of my clients actually that I'm running the influencer program for has decided universally to not do anything other than LinkedIn. So because he's a business owner and he's very busy, he's got a lot on his plate, what he's done is he's focused entirely on creating a really strong brand identity just on LinkedIn. And obviously I'm talking about widening his influence as much as possible. But whilst he is where he's at, because if you think about how much time it takes to create content and curate that from other sources, it can take time. And at the end of the day, we've all got to make money. We've all got to, you know, work with our clients or whatever. So the reason I say that is by spreading yourself thinly on all of the channels, and if you haven't got the time and resource to do it, you may decide to focus on one of them, but do it well. Exactly. You know, regular posting, really start to drive your engagement. I mean, as it happens, I know we're talking about Twitter today, and I have a bit like James, actually, I do use Twitter, but not as much as I do Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, because there are only so many hours in the day. Yeah,
but Gordon, as well as that, it's the old saying: different folks, different strokes.
That's correct.
Some companies, some people might find Twitter good for certain businesses. Just I think the people that are on this webinar today, it doesn't really work for them, or it doesn't work for the business. But there is other companies and businesses out there that find it useful. It's just you don't find it as useful as some of the other online platforms.
Yeah. No, I know. I mean, it was interesting listening to Lisa a few minutes ago, because I think what clearly she's done very well is she has connected with stuff like hashtag bloggers wanted. You know, I love that approach. So she's looking at using that to find work, and it might mean that we only do a few things, but we do them really well. Guys, I've got to jump on a call at 9:30. Really enjoyed the conversation with you guys today. Hope you found it useful and beneficial. I'm going to be here again next Wednesday on a different topic. If there's anything that you need from me, drop me a line, gordon@gordonglenister.com, if I can help you at all. Or if you want to connect with anybody else that's here, then feel free to do so. I think we've put our Twitter handles on there.
Okay, thanks again, Gordon. See you next week.
Have a lovely day, won't you guys?
Thank you, Gordon. That was wonderful. Take care.
Great stuff as usual.
Thank you very much. Great to meet everybody. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.